Hi, I'm Katie with Dashing Dish, and at Dashing Dish, I'm teaching you guys how to nourish not only your body, but your soul as well. And today we're gonna make a spinach artichoke spaghetti squash bake. And at Dashing Dish, a big part of my ministry is to really go back to what God designed us to put into our bodies. And what I like to do is I like to say, is this healthy or is this not? And think about, what is a God-made food? So what did God really intend from the very beginning for us to nourish our bodies with? And so all of the ingredients here, I'm going to show you how all of it we can kind of go back and say, okay, well, we know that this God created because it grows from the ground, it grows from the earth. And spaghetti squash is one of my favorite pasta swaps that I use a lot of times in recipes because we know that it is a God-made food. And so spaghetti squash is sometimes a little bit intimidating for people because it's this big, round, hard squash, and you look at it in the grocery store and you think, how do I even begin to prepare this? But it's actually very simple. All you have to do is just get it softened first, and then from there it's easy to slice, and I'll show you how you can kind of remove the strands. But to start, all I did was I roasted it on a baking pan, and I actually roasted it whole. I didn't even cut it because, like I said, sometimes just cutting a big round squash can be intimidating. So I just popped it right in the oven whole like this, and then I roasted it for about 20 minutes at 425, and then I cut it down the center. And then I popped it back in the oven for about another 10 to 15 minutes just to finish the roasting process. How you know it's finished and it's ready to be cooked in a recipe, or you can eat it just like this, is you take a fork and you can see how the strands are coming out just like spaghetti. And so as we kind of work this out, you'll see that it has seeds in the middle. And you can actually just discard of those seeds, or you can actually cook them up just like you would like a pumpkin seed and roast them with just some salt and a little bit of avocado oil or olive oil and eat those seeds. So again, this is all going back to foods that God designed for our bodies to eat. And spaghetti squash is one of my favorites because it's a great swap for pasta or even spaghetti, just like it sounds, spaghetti squash, in most recipes and dishes. And it has really the texture very similar to spaghetti. And if we think about pasta, we know that that's definitely a man-made food. So why I love swapping out veggies for pasta is because we know that God designed vegetables to go into our bodies. And so we know that it will nourish our bodies, it will give us sustained energy, and we will feel better. And that's really one of the most important things that I encourage a lot of times is, how does your body actually feel? You know, we think a lot of times about losing weight or you know, getting fit, but we don't really think about, how does this food actually make my body feel? And whenever we eat foods that God designed for us to put into our bodies, we know that our bodies will feel their best. And so I'm going to just finish up this spaghetti squash real quick and just take the seeds out. So you can just discard of those seeds, and you can just, like I said, toss them away. So how I do that is just get your hands in it. Don't worry about getting your hands dirty. And just kind of pull them out like that. And they usually come out just in a clump. And then the rest of what's left is really just the spaghetti squash. You want to get as many as you can out there. Just like that. So like I said, you could eat it just like that, or you can put it into a recipe like we're going to do here. So the next thing I have is I have a saute pan on a burner, and I'm going to turn that to about medium-high. I'm going to let that get hot, and then I'm going to cut up an onion. And a trick I have for cutting up an onion is to first slice it a few times through, just like that. And then you want to take each half and put it on a flat surface, so that way it's not rolling around on you. Then you want to cut it a few more times, just long ways. And then turn the whole thing, just like that, and then cut it long ways one more time. And that's a quick trick to dice an onion without cutting your finger. And then you can take this diced onion and you can put it into our pan here. It's nice and hot. So we have one medium onion and then 1 large spaghetti squash so far for this recipe. And we're just gonna cook this up just until it's slightly tender. It'll just take a few minutes. Starting to get a little bit brown. And what you want to do here is get the onion so it's just a little bit brown on the outside, not burning. If you start to see it's burning, then you might want to turn the heat down. But what that does is it brings the flavors and the sweetness of the onion out when you start to see it brown like that. Then you can add your spinach. And this is spinach artichoke, so it's just like it sounds. So we have spinach and we have artichoke. And what when I came up with this recipe, I thought, what is, you know, absolutely delicious about a spinach artichoke dip? And then what if we added pasta or spaghetti squash to it and then baked it off and made it almost into a casserole or a bake? And the great thing about this recipe is it has obviously tons of vegetables, which are all God-made foods, but also it has a good source of protein in the filling, and I'm going to show you that while this cooks off a little bit. So what you want to do here is I just added some frozen spinach and it's already chopped for me. So I'm going to let just that kind of thaw out just a little bit, get some of that frost off of that spinach just so it thaws. And then we're going to add our artichokes as well to the pan. And you can buy them chopped up and cut, or you can add them whole too. And if you do that, you're just going to want to, you see how tender those are, just straight from the can. You just want to kind of cut it with your spatula just like that and break them apart as it cooks. So we're going to let that cook off just a little bit. And you want to continue to kind of just cut them up. And this is really just a lazy cook's way of doing it. You can, like I said, cut it on the cutting board as well. But if you have a nice sturdy spatula, those artichokes break up real easy. And you can see how this is kind of starting to come together, look just like the base of a spinach artichoke dip. And then to the pan, we're going to add a little bit of garlic and onion powder. Half teaspoon of each of those. And look how good that looks. And you know, I think sometimes people think that when you're eating healthy that it's dry or bland or boring, but really we can see how these flavors come together. All God-made foods, absolutely delicious. So then what we're going to do is the creamy base that's adding the protein to this dish as well is we have some cottage cheese, some plain Greek yogurt, Parmesan cheese, and some eggs here. And so we're going to turn the heat off of this because this is totally done cooking. And we're going to add all of our creamy mixtures to this bowl. So the cottage cheese adds a lot of protein. We know that that's a God-made food. Same with the plain Greek yogurt. Now, none of these have any added sugars or anything added to it. A 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, and that will give it a nice salty flavor. Stir those together, and then we're going to add 3 egg whites. Now, to separate an egg, you could do a full egg here, but to separate the egg, we're going to just cut it kind of down the middle just by tapping it on the bowl, and then just tossing it back and forth with the yolk going between the two. And then I'm going to throw that just in a little trash bowl. So I cut it down the middle. We're going to toss it between the two here. And then we have just the egg whites. And you can use the egg yolks for something different, like an omelet or something, you know, that you're having later on. You just store them in your fridge. But we're just going to toss those for now. So that's our creamy protein mixture that's really going to give the spaghetti squash bake that rich, almost cream cheese flavor without actually using cream cheese at all. And then we will take this spinach mixture and we will add it to this cream mixture here. We're going to stir it all up. And what I love about spaghetti squash is you can actually bake this filling right in the spaghetti squash, and it actually presents very nicely that way, where you just take all the strands, kind of put the filling in, bake it right in the shell, and then, you know, it serves up nice and it looks pretty, it presents pretty. But we're gonna actually just put it into a baking dish here. So you can see how this mixture is gonna definitely bake up nice. So then to add the spaghetti squash, all you're gonna do is you're gonna take your fork, you're gonna take the strands and empty them all into this bowl here. Now, like I said, if you wanted to use this shell, you can just take this whole filling, keep the spaghetti squash shell, and then put it right back into the shell to bake. So you would do this with both of the spaghetti squash, you can see how I did that, and then stir it all up, and then pop it into a baking dish. Now we have a baking dish that's already filled over here, and all you're gonna do is once this is all mixed together and you put it in the baking dish, you're gonna top it with some mozzarella cheese on top. Just a little bit goes a long way. Why I like Parmesan cheese or feta cheese or mozzarella is really just a little bit goes a long way with flavor. And then you can see that we baked this for about 25 minutes and it baked up really beautiful. And let's just cut a little piece here so you can see what it looks like. And like I said, if you like spaghetti squash or spinach artichoke dip, then the two combined is absolutely delicious. You can always use a pasta in this dish as well instead of spaghetti squash, but you can see how nicely that came out with the egg whites kind of holding it together, just like a spinach artichoke dip. And this is all completely God-made food, and that's what I love about using all of these ingredients, is that we can know that it's all foods that God designed for us to put in our bodies, and so we know that it will nourish our bodies as well. For this recipe or more just like it, you can head over to dashingdish.com or ctvn.org.